What's the best job for a lazy person? I worked as a security guard for a trucking company on the weekends. The rest of the company conveniently didn't work weekends, so I had the whole place to myself. I worked 12-hour days and walked around a small wing of the property every hour and documented anything that was out of the ordinary. Almost nothing was ever out of the ordinary. Other than that, I didn't do anything. It was actually really boring because the guardhouse was outside of the Wi-Fi area, so I blew through my phone data really fast. To cure the boredom and ease my phone bill, I bought a portable DVD player and watched every DVD I had. Alright, so is this why the movies show so many security guards as lazy people who are super easy to slip past? Story 2. I used to go to the factory where they make giant rotating machinery for power plant generators. It would take a week or more to machine these giant discs, and the machinist just sat there watching this giant computer-operated machine do all the work. If an error popped up, the machine would stop and sound an alarm on the computer, and the machinist would pick up the phone and call an engineer to come fix it. Also, they didn't do any of the removal or setup. That was done by a team of engineers and quote-unquote transport folks. $30 an hour. Story 3. A lot of IT-related office jobs at big companies involve a lot of downtime for one reason or another, where you're just sitting around waiting for work to come in. Just be careful what you wish for. I did a 6-month work placement at a place doing QC on medical data entry. It was as riveting as it sounds. And due to poor management, there were massive stretches of time, like more than a solid week, where there was nothing for us to do. We were all literally begging for work because we were so freaking bored. If someone had asked me to start hoovering the carpets, I would have jumped at the chance. Creative IT jobs like the video games and special effects industries are major exceptions. Story 4. In middle school, I had a classmate who did a 4-week internship at a company where they sent him to the gate man. He had some forms to fill for our report in school, and this guy just wrote the most awesome stories the gate man had to tell about his job. My favorite was, when I'm bored, and I am damn often bored, I act entitled and punish those drivers who ring the bell angrily. I then let them wait for an extra 20 seconds before I let them in. Answering my classmate's question, what was the most critical situation at your job? The gate man said, I once went to the toilet. It was one of those boring Friday afternoons where no freaking buddy comes in as folks are home early. When I came back, I found one of our customers with his whole freaking entourage queuing up at the gate. 3 freaking vehicles. I dropped my newspaper and hit that gate open button like it could have saved my life, and boy, it did. They just drove past my booth, lucky me, and that's the story when my bowel movement almost cost me my job. Story 5. Get an office job, figure out how to do it in a fraction of the time, coast for a couple of years. When a coworker quits, tell your boss that you can add their responsibilities to yours instead of hiring a new person for a 40% raise. Figure out how to do that in a fraction of the time. Get all your work done every day and also spend hours on Reddit. Bonus, literally nobody else knows how to do your job, so they'll think long and hard before downsizing you. It helps if you understand Excel or whatever your office uses more than anybody else in the company. Alright, so this is the kind of pro gamer move that turns a 40-hour work week into a speedrun. Story 6. I worked at a pool the summer after my senior year of high school. I wasn't a lifeguard. I just had to have people show me their Navy card to get in the pool, and I had to check the pH levels of the pool at the end of every day. I only had to text my boss, could be on my phone the whole day, chilled with my then girlfriend and ate food. I didn't even have to clock out for lunch and got an extra half an hour every day. The downside was working in the hot sun. You'd be under an umbrella, but the job could get boring. I should also add that most of my friends were Navy kids whose mothers or fathers were working, so I would be able to chill with them all day too, because it was their neighborhood. All in all, it was a pretty good gig if you're lazy. Also, one time my friends and I were there and there was a live skunk in the pool filter. He was trying to swim, so I took a pull net and gently pushed him into it and then let him down in the grass outside. He was just laying on his back, panting frantically. Then he jumped up and ran into the woods. I have it on film on my old iPhone. Story 7. Hurricane Debris Cleanup Crew Safety Monitor. This won't apply to you unless you live in a place where you're hit by hurricanes at least once a year and don't mind working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. I promise you that 10 of those 12-hour days will be spent sitting there, doing nothing, playing games on your phone if the battery lasts long enough. I switched to crossword puzzles to try and save my battery. Keep in mind that this job only exists immediately after a hurricane hits and then for about 4 to 5 months afterward, depending on the strength of the hurricane. You will get time and a half on the final 44 hours of the week, so you essentially get paid for the work of someone who has 2 decent entry-level jobs without actually performing anywhere near that amount of work. Story 8. Truck driving, and not in a bad way. I drove a semi for a few years after the military, and it is by far the best job for low-energy introverts. You get paid to do nothing other than stare out a window and listen to music, podcasts, or the radio. You do have to get out every now and then for work, but you won't be doing any back-breaking work, and it won't be for more than 10 to 15 minutes at most. It's the best job if you like to be alone and not really have to do anything, plus it pays really well. Story 9. My job, I make the ballistic fiber that goes in bulletproof vests. I basically just watch movies and play on my phone all day long while the machine runs. As long as everything goes smoothly, I have around 5 minutes of work to do every hour and a half whenever the machine is ready to run new packages. I'm on break half the day too because we do 1 hour on the floor, then swap out with our relief for an hour. So every other hour, you're on break for an hour, and I have a 2-hour lunch. I make $30.23 an hour and can get all the overtime I want. Story 5. It depends on what kind of lazy you are, the work hard for 1 or 2 decades and chill for the rest of your life lazy, or the wake up at 11 and go to work at 2 p.m. kind of lazy. Someone in my family works as an anesthesiologist and another as a neuropsychologist. Both literally work 10 to 15 hours a week for $150,000 to $225,000 a year. They worked hard through their education and got lucky in some parts, but the payoff is being lazy or retirement capable by age 40 if you're willing to retire to a cheaper country, or around 60 if you invest and save well and want to stay in the States. Alternatively, some of my laziest friends, gamers, potheads, work remotely as software engineers or web engineers. This work is task-based and relatively independent depending on the company you work for, and if you seek out projects for startups or small growing companies, you also get to try your luck at making it big with pieces of equity here and there. Story 11. I worked as a personal shopper for a couple of years, and it was the chillest and easiest job I have ever had. It was part of this app/website, so I worked remotely from home, basically just Googling things for people and trying to find the best price. I actually found it through Reddit in one of the job subreddits, and it was a small startup company that had only been around for a few months. I honestly don't know how it lasted as long as it did because we didn't charge for our services. Although we had partnerships with many companies and websites, sometimes we ordered through eBay and Amazon since they would end up being the cheapest option. We also didn't have a huge customer base and most days were super slow. It was pretty nice for me. I got paid $16 an hour to basically just watch TV all day and wait to see if we had any requests, most of which wouldn't even take that long. They finally ended up closing last year, but it was an interesting run, and if anything, I am now really good at finding deals for myself when I want to buy something. Story 12. I'm currently working as a companion for rich older folks with early stage dementia. Their kids feel guilty for not spending time with them, so they pay me, too much, to go to the care home every day, hang out, drive their fancy cars, and go out for lunch. Most of them don't wake up until after midday, so I do whatever I want all morning. My current client likes to go to this expensive restaurant every day for a 3-course lunch with a bottle of wine, which, to be honest, has become a bit much for me. Every few days, I send the kids a happy, smiley picture of the old-timer having a good time, and then they get the warm fuzzies. I'll drive the Jag or the Rolls, get them a paper, but I don't do any personal care at all. It's a sweet gig. Story 13. You can grow up on a farm and then join the Navy because you think it's less work than farming. However, they'll want you to do a lot of the work at the Naval Academy, which you can get out of by studying lots of math. The leadership will then think you're a geek with geek potential rather than a jock with command potential. Then they'll offer you a chance to fly a plane because you can't be stupid and fly a plane and everyone knows you're good at math. But flying a single-man plane is lots of work. You have to be at 100% all the time you're in the air. So you can transfer to big planes with multi-man crews and co-pilots. Since all your coworkers really want to transfer out of big planes because they're not flashy and heroic, you keep getting promoted until you're the first person in your class to make captain. Eventually, since you're the only officer in the entire Navy who has flown big planes for an entire career and you know everything there is to know about them, you start inventing new stuff that makes even less work for yourself. Stuff such as autopilots and navigations assistants. Then a war breaks out and you figure the safest thing to do is to fly rescue missions in your flying boat, picking up downed fighter pilots. This paradoxically allows you to garner decorations for heroism. Then after the war, you retire honorably as a junior admiral, known for your amazing exploits as the man too lazy to fail. Story 14. I'm sure this will likely be lost among the other awesome jobs, but I once had a job that required maybe 10 minutes of work a day. Essentially, my job was to rent mobility scooters to people. I'd sit in a small room surrounded by different colored scooters, and I'd just read or watch movies with my feet up because we had maybe 2 to 4 customers a day. If a person came in for a scooter, I'd ask for their name and postcode, write it down on a piece of paper, and give them the keys. When they came back, usually an hour or 2 later, I'd charge the scooter by just plugging it in. That's all. That was the entire job. The work really slowed down when the local government started charging for the formerly free service. Then I'd maybe see 3 people a week, and they paid me £8 per hour. Story 15. I lucked out massively at uni. I responded to an ad to build an alumni website that had a few unique features. During the interview, they asked how I would build a specific feature, and I basically said, I'm not sure, I have to do some research. Apparently, every other candidate had arrogantly said they could do it easily, and it rubbed the interviewers the wrong way. I literally got the job because I said I wasn't sure. It was amazing money for a broke student with an hourly contract rate way higher than my previous bar and retail work. They were happy for me to work from home, provided I sent them updates by way of various documents and prototypes. I basically clocked in a crap ton of hours as I could just fire up my laptop when I had some free time and crack on. And this went on for ages. Unfortunately, the PhD project managers found out they were not allowed to carry on with the project and the funding was pulled. I basically billed a crap ton of hours, got to hack some code whenever I had time, and never had to finish the product. It was easily the cushiest gig I've ever had and was absolute gold as a student. Sadly, bills had to be paid and I had to pick up some regular work, which was also awesome, but not nearly this good. Story 16. I once had a sweet gig as an overnight caregiver for a sweet old lady neighbor of my mom's friend. She lived alone, was around 90, and was super mentally and physically with it. She just got scared at night and liked the company. I would go over at around 8 p.m., watch Dancing with the Stars or whatever with her, discuss current events, and would usually end up going to bed before her at around 11. She didn't mind as long as I was in the house. I would wake up and have breakfast with her, then leave around 7 or 8 the next morning. She paid $100 a night. I did this for a while when I was preparing for my NCLEX and for a bit after I passed. I had to leave because I got a job as a camp nurse and then I ended up moving and getting a real job, so I didn't try to get that job back. I hope she's still alive and that someone else is filling in as well as I did. They were some pretty big lazy shoes to fill. Story 17. Early in my career, I was a county adult probation officer. I got assigned to a town of 3,000 people. The local justice court wanted their own PO assigned and the judge wanted me to live in the town. It was slow, to say the least, but my last year was almost work-free. The average PO has a caseload of 60 to 80 probationers. I had two, and I'd see them once a month. With seeing them in the office, a once-a-month home visit, documenting my efforts in court, I worked maybe 5 hours per month. My boss said I could stay home if I wanted, but I had to have my cell phone on. For a year, I probably put in less than 60 hours of actual work. Story 18. One of my first few jobs was working at a mom-and-pop jewelry business. She sold exclusively online, so we just went into this dark, cluttered office space to assemble jewelry. You would sit for 8 hours in a little cubicle surrounded on all sides by towering boxes of beads and casually assemble 20, 200 necklaces, bracelets, and earrings a day. It was very easy work, and I liked collecting the beads off the floor to take home and craft with. She rarely checked in on our progress, and she was too busy sitting alone in her office going on racist tirades against bad online customers while listening to Rush Limbaugh talk radio. I didn't work there long, and she's since been shut down for refusing to pay employees, but I have a nice selection of handmade glass beads to show for it all. The easy work kept you somewhat engaged. Story 19. I once worked for a company that had a major database replication every night. Sometimes that replication would fail. If it did, they wouldn't know until morning, and then all of their reports would be wrong, causing quite a bit of chaos. They promoted me to the software team because of my limited SQL skills, but for the first few months, my only job was to literally watch a progress bar to see if it stopped moving for more than 15 to 20 minutes. If it did, I had to call and wake up the database admin so they could debug and restart the replication. No one else was in the building at this time, not even security. I literally brought my 360 in and played MW2 every night, all night for 2 to 3 months. Before the day shift showed up, since the optics would be bad, even though I had literally no other responsibilities in the beginning, I just packed everything in my backpack and left. Eventually, they realized I was much more valuable than that, and I got a great deal more responsibility, but that was a pretty crazy, lazy few months. Story 20. I had it. When SC had a form of legalized gambling, they had places all over the NC-SC border. They would sometimes have themes, mine did, but most were just buildings with rooms that were 4 posts to outline and what a room was because you could only have 5 machines per room. I was a room attendant, and the room area was only big enough for 5 machines, 5 people, and a chair for me to sit. Did someone win money? I yelled for someone else to go get it. Did they want food? I yelled for someone else to go get it. My job was to watch people to make sure no funny stuff was going on. I would talk to them and was their little helper. I cleaned the machines, which took all of 10 minutes. I worked the third shift, which meant that during the week, there were times I had 0 people, and that was pretty common. We weren't allowed to sleep, but if you had a room that had an actual wall, the manager couldn't see you. Everyone there smoked grass and drank. We weren't supposed to drink on the job, but everyone smoked grass on the job. We'd all take turns going out back and getting spiked. Then when we were off at like 8 a.m., we'd go party at someone's house and get plastered. If you had someone win big, you'd get crazy tips. I had a guy hit $5,000 on a machine, then moved to another and hit for $3,000. I made about $1,000 in tips that night alone. It was glorious and unfortunately short-lived. I had a girlfriend at the time and a lot of disposable income. I kept her so icy, she looked like a frickin' igloo. Story 21. I was a security guard in a closed link belt factory in Chicago. This building took up 11 city blocks. It was freaking huge. I worked 12-hour shifts. This was in 1975, so no mobile phones or computers existed, and DVD players were the sizes of ATMs. There was only one room in this place that had heat, the power room for all of the overhead cranes. The temperature, even in the summer, was in the 40s. You had to wear a jacket. In the winter, it was colder than the freezing temperatures outside. The floor was made of oil-soaked wooden blocks, which I shoveled into a 55-gallon drum and set on fire for heat. But on the plus side, the power was still on to the cranes that ran on a rail at the top of a 70-foot ceiling. I got pretty good at 55-gallon drum bowling, using the crane hook to swing into the barrels. I was a student, the pay was good, and there was plenty of study time. Story 22. Field engineer. Hear me out. Field engineers are often salaried and are given territories with a list of things that need to be completed as well as their due dates. Barring a few emergency callouts, that's the full scope of their work. Or if they are of the flavor of FE that I am, energy distribution, they do global work, but only have seasons where they are busy and occasionally deal with callouts during the off-season. So as an FE, you spend a few months out of the year busting your butt and working long days. Once the busy time ends, you sit at home for weeks and play video games or do whatever you want while collecting a paycheck. I just spent the past 12 days binge-watching DBZ, replaying Persona 5, and storyboarding my webcomic. You can't really be lazy until you actually become a field engineer, though. Something about being responsible for multi-million-dollar equipment and such. And if you're enjoying the videos so far, maybe learning a thing or two from them, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 23. I just want a 24, 28-hour week job that pays decently for a simple life. I literally would rather dig canals in 35 plus degrees Celsius for 24 hours than sit for 40 hours in an AC-fed office doing virtually nothing. For me, it's just about the hours, but all I see around me are jobs where one works a lot, requires skill, and pays well, or jobs where one works a lot, does not require skill, but pays crap, and I've done them all. For the last 6 years, I've changed 5 industries, working 50 to 100-hour jobs. Currently, I'm working a 45-hour job plus 5 hours of commute weekly. I've talked about this with my psychologist, and I just can't explain how much I don't care how meaningful, hard, easy, or engaging the work is. I just want the hours to go down significantly while earning a livable wage, and by livable, I mean living frugally. However, all I hear is, you're lazy, you are unmotivated, you'll never make it with that mindset, etc. Make it to what? I don't want a freaking villa to be a CEO or whatever, or even a manager of something for, geez, come on. I just want a simple and peaceful life. I've sailed the 7 seas and I've seen more than most, and I've found what makes me happy. Living frugally with my fiancée, having time to do my hobbies in peace, making love to her, and always having a good night's rest. Screw off with the rest. By the way, last but not least, I would like to mention that I always did all my work obligations dutifully and always went above and beyond. I've turned down several better paying positions over the years because they meant more hours worked, often significantly, because I believe that if I have to be at work and people rely on me, I might as well give my best. However, my stance on work does not change. I am also willing to put some savings aside in the next months or years to get a master's degree in any field that would ensure me such a job. I'm not lazy about that, and I'm working towards that one goal, but I do not want to be that goal to be 10 plus years away, to be honest. Story 24. English teaching online. Anyone with an AA degree willing to do a TESOL certification, a few hours, depending on how quickly you learn, or anyone with a bachelor's can teach Chinese kids online for $20 an hour. This is what I do as a college student. I can choose whichever hours I want and can cancel with 5 hours notice with no penalty. The class just gets passed on to another teacher. I get paid to work in my pajamas for decent money. Not to mention, the students are absolutely adorable. I had a girl no older than 3 in almost perfect English tell me, "Teacher, my brother's name is Hamburger." I mean, that alone justifies the work. Also, stock trading, not technically a job. Penny stocks are great money if you do your research. Stock apps like Robinhood allow you to trade stocks for free and give you a free stock if you register from a referral code. Story 25. Learning a BI visual site like Power BI or Tableau. Get an analytics job for a small to mid-sized company, automate their reporting, analysis, and all of that. And from there, you can choose to coast or bank that work and excel further. I have been very successful doing this. I love my job. There are still challenges, but I feel that I can take any pace I want. I choose a fast pace and hard work to learn more, but I could just as easily choose a slow pace and still be very productive. Just as an example, we had to do monthly reports for our retail division, quarterly reports for our food service division, monthly customer reports, and a weekly Walmart report. Each report either took roughly a day to prepare because of how specific everyone wanted them, or cost an outside agency $18,000 a year to provide. I automated this stuff to the point where I just have to manually initiate the data downloads. I'm too lazy to set up and constantly tweak a headless browser or something like that. Aside from the roughly 5 to 8 hours per report I invested in building the reports, setting up equations, managing queries, and meeting with stakeholders to see what they want reported out, it only takes me a total of about an hour per year for all combined reports. The good parts, it makes me shine. The bad part, it makes the guy before me, who is still here, look like he was just dragging his heels. Story 26. In general, I'd almost always hire lazy people if given the chance. I'm exceptionally lazy, and this is why it's the best. I always find the most efficient way to handle a task so that I do the least amount of work. I always do it right the first time so that I don't have to waste my time doing it again. Most lazy people I know are the same. Lazy doesn't mean incompetent or stupid, it just means you don't want to do extra stuff. I still have to eat, so I do my job. My laziness makes me get it done fast and get it done right. I love sales because most companies don't care what you're doing as long as you hit your targets. So I'll crush my goals a few days a week and then I can stay home, play games, and do nothing. Story 27. Help desk support, working from home on the third shift. Since I don't have a family, I was actually totally okay with just working nights. Working nights isn't bad for your health if you keep your schedule constant, so it won't affect the amount of sleep you get. My manager would thank me every time I came in for meetings for doing what other people didn't want to do. I literally did an hour or two of work a day. The average was probably 1 hour and 15 minutes. I played video games or studied for certifications the rest of the shift. The best part is, though I never talked about it, I just said I read during downtime. It's no secret that third shifters play games to stay awake and that the manager has talked about it as well. But the catch is, like a lot of these lazy jobs, you have to put in the work consistently so that your company trusts you to not be lazy if there's actual work to be done. My numbers were really high and I was constantly flagged as a no BS, he'll do any work you need him to kind of guy. They wouldn't trust someone with poor numbers to go remote. Story 28. Doggy daycare. It depends on where you work, but I worked at a veterinary clinic as the only person running the new doggy daycare program. I'd have to set up in the morning 10 minutes and clean and sanitize in the evening 20 to 30 minutes depending on what chemicals I used that day. The rest of the day was either playing with dogs, usually only 10 to 20 minutes until they fell asleep, or watching them sleep for the other 7 hours. I had no idea how incredibly boring most of the day would be when I took the job, but since I was alone in the back of the clinic, they let me listen to music and I'd bring in crosswords. I loved the dogs, but the day dragged on once they got tired. Also, I was amazed at how many people would bring in aggressive, defensive, might be a better word, dogs, thinking I'd be able to train them or something. Since it was a new program, the clinic wouldn't turn anyone away, so I would get bit a lot and have to attempt to convince the owner that I'm not a trainer and not to bring the dog back. I quit after about 6 months and started working in a different animal-related field where I'm running around doing things outside all day. Story 29. I'm late to post, but I used to work at a PVC pipe factory. My department consisted of 2 or 3 two-person glue teams. Our job was to glue up large PVC pipe fittings up to 24 inches. For instance, if you don't know much about pipe, we would glue a 45-degree spigot and a 45-degree socket to make a 90-degree elbow. We had to place the spigot and socket ends in a large vat of primer, which would soften the PVC and make the weld, along with the glue when put together. One guy's only job was to take a butter knife and lightly etch each PVC part as it sat in the primer to make sure it was soft enough to make the connection. That was his only job, and he didn't have to do anything else except push a broom for the last 10 minutes of the day. On the days we ran 3 teams, we would work fast, so he had to essentially run back and forth from each station until he would complain to the boss and we were told to slow down. He still does this job and has been doing it for the past 15 years. I did it for a few 8-hour shifts every now and then when he was gone and was about to ready to off myself by the end of the day. It was so boring. Story 30. I used to work at an after-school program as a side job. It took about 4 hours out of my day, 5 days a week. The first half hour was free play, which was basically watching kids play with their friends. I'd always find a way to get involved since I like playing sports with the older ones, but on the lazy days, I'd just be on my phone playing Drawing with Friends or whatever that new app at the time was called, the one where you get a phrase and have to draw it and send it to your friend who had a guest. It was just peaking in popularity back then. Then after that was an hour of homework time, which for me consisted of watching Netflix and yelling at kids if they weren't doing their homework from the comfort of my own chair. The last hour was also free play. If any kid got hurt, I'd just redirect them to my team lead. The job stopped being a lazy one when I became the team lead. LOL. Story 31. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but back when I decided I would study computer science, the president of the faculty told us uncertain boys something along these lines. Computers can help us automate things so that we humans can think of better things like art or whatever. And this made me think that being lazy, something I would actually enjoy, could involve making the world a little bit easier for other lazy people and, of course, for me. So you may want to try computer science. Keep in mind that you must like math at least a bit, but also keep in mind that math is really badly taught up until university. I didn't like math until the very last year of high school when we changed teachers, and she focused more on concepts rather than on formulas and pure calculations. I was lucky in university too. In my continuous course, not so much in the discrete one, I began to like matrices later. Anyway, if you want to quickly and lazily try out what the fuss is all about, if you haven't already, try out Python. It's very easy for anyone to understand and is very useful even if you become a computer scientist, not just a toned down thing for beginners. Story 32. Firefighter is a great job, though you can't actually act lazy. It can be a lazy job with routine apps. I work as a firefighter slash paramedic in a firehouse that has a ladder and an engine company. The engine and I go on maybe 5 runs in 24 hours, and the ladder goes on roughly 3, but either can have a no-hitter. The engine company firefighters make $3,500 more a year than the ladder company, and I make $7,000 more. If you wanted to do the least amount of work possible, work the ladder. Older, large cities designed and placed firehouses in locations that made sense when there were horse-drawn fire carriages. For example, there's a firehouse on either side of a hill because the horses struggle to get over the hill if it was icy or snow-covered. Today, if the city tries to shut down the extra firehouse, the community loses their minds asking, "Oh, what about the children?" I work 2 24-hour shifts a week and get 8 hours of overtime every 2 weeks, or I can take it off as paid time off. I take it as paid time off every time. With 6 weeks of vacation plus banking all of my additional overtime as extra paid time off, I get an additional 7 weeks and 32 hours of bank time, which is basically the same as vacation time. The reason it's 7 weeks is because the bank time off is multiplied by 1.5, since it should have been overtime. Also, the time off you take is not applied to the 2 24-hour shifts per week. It costs 40 hours of time to take a week off. The same rule applies to the 6 weeks of vacation. So I have 2 24-hour shifts a week plus 13 weeks and 32 hours off a year. I work 78 24-hour shifts a year plus a single swing 8-hour shift. That leaves 286 days a year where you can go to school, work a side job, or absolutely do nothing. I travel a lot, but when I'm not traveling, I'm sitting on my butt on Reddit and playing video games. The schedule alone is worth it. It's the best job in the world, even without the schedule. It's a 6-figure salary with half of the average of your top 3 years of pay for life and health insurance for life after 20 years. With a couple of promotions, you can make chief at some point, and your pension will be based on $200,000 and change. Story 33. Google hires lazy people because they found that lazy people look for solutions more quickly. That is, people who are lazy enough to want to build software that does things that others don't have to. Human error is the greatest threat to any system. Machines are far better at performing specific tasks correctly than humans are. This is why, as much as possible, people are leaning toward using software to perform boring tasks. This is especially important at Google, where there are so many lines of code, so many services working together, and so many people. Having to rely on people to keep the machine well-oiled is just not sustainable. That's why they've hired the best lazy people to automate these tasks. Story 34. Collections technician at a museum. I did it as an internship, and for 3 hours a week, I sat at a computer and cataloged artifacts. The process was simple. Take a box, pick out an artifact, describe it, write the accession number on the artifact, and put it in an acid-free box. I repeated this until it was time to leave or until everything was accessioned. But really, I mainly just sat with the curator and talked about history, military, reenacting, and muscle cars. Public service announcement: visit your local museum, visit non-local museums, visit every museum on Earth. History needs to be preserved, and the people who preserve it are genuinely pretty awesome too. Story 35. I worked in master control for television. The job got easier over time as automation crept in. I had young kids and only kept the job because I had weird shifts and could keep them out of daycare. The automation took all of the craftsmanship out of it, so it was boring as heck, and I wound up leaving once my kids were of school age. So I was always tired because of the kids and would nod off occasionally. The TV was great though. They'd have a stern announcer come on and say, "There's more Judge Mathis after this," or "The proceeding was a paid advertisement for the Gary vacuum." There was plenty of time to perk up and switch the commercial break. To this day, if I'm sleeping in front of the TV and it goes silent, I wake up immediately feeling that something's wrong. Automation that had me working ahead of real time, segmenting out shows that would come in on satellite that day but air a couple of days out. I worked out a legendary work practice to get them all done quickly and accurately. By done, I mean having computer servers churning away while I doze, surf the web, or watch the news on another channel. If you have a complicated, repetitive job, give it to the lazy man. He'll find the most efficient way to get it done. Story 36. My friend works for the mines, and I'm not exactly sure of the title, but I think it's as a confined space worker. Basically, when the mines are shut down for repairs, she goes in along with the contracted workers who repair the machines in the mine. She sits by the confined space. The best example of a confined space she's been to was a giant tank in the ground. Workers were lowered inside the tank to do the repairs, and she and two others confined space workers would be sitting at the entrance of the tank looking down through the hole. Her only two jobs once at the confined space are to write down the names of the workers who are in the machine and the times they go in and out. The second job is to radio the rescue team that's on standby if there's an emergency. It's very important, but it's definitely the best job for a lazy person. They always bring their phones as they sit at confined spaces, and sometimes even the crew trailer for anywhere between 10 to 14 hours of their shift. Story 37. Laboratory quality control for an oil and gas company. Twice during my 12-hour shift, I get deliveries of between 4 and 6 samples of the product we make. I run them through a few gas chromatographs, verify that the product is within our selling spec, and approve them for sale. It takes about 2 hours to prepare and run each round. The reason it needs to be a 24-hour operation is if something goes wrong on the processing side of the plant, we need to be ready at a moment's notice to analyze the latest sample. This happens once every 3 months or so, which is incredibly infrequent to the point where it catches you by surprise. So the other 8 hours a day, I read, watch Netflix, or play computer games. I'm currently trying to get my first deity level win on Civ 6. It's tough if you get settled next to an aggressive neighbor. Story 38. A job that you love and that keeps you busy? Lazy is not always lazy. There are people that appear and even feel lazy but are just not motivated to do something great. In the military, I treated my uniform and boots with respect. I paid attention to detail and expected others to do as well. There was this crap bag private cook out there. His boots showed worn brown leather, not black. I thought he was the laziest private with no attention to detail. One day, it started snowing like a mother trucker. The next day, it was still snowing. I dug out of the barracks and hitched a ride on a snowplow to the only open mess hall. The private had made it out of the barracks and down to the mess hall in that frickin' blizzard and was cooking for the troops. This was not until after he carved an ice sculpture of an eagle, which was one of the most beautiful works of art that I have ever seen. His attention to detail was amazing. And that was the day that I realized people have many different motivations and can show the same or even greater love to something they love. People can be motivated by things that are different from your own motivations. I learned to lead by finding the motivations of people and helping them to bring out the best in themselves versus expecting people to show the best in the strengths that I have. My advice to you is to find out what you love to do, and the motivation to do great things will follow. When you do what you love, it isn't work. You are asking the wrong question, but you might just find the right answer among these comments. Story 39. Specialize in some complex software that nobody else understands. I do CAM programming for CNC machines, and nobody really knows what's involved as my job is a black box to everyone but me. I get some sketches and a schedule and people leave me alone after that. As long as you put out mistake-free work in a reasonable time, you're free to mess around and work at your own schedule. I know the software inside and out, so I have automated a lot of my workflow. I can work at half speed, take lots of breaks to crap post on Reddit, make rounds to socialize, and get patted on the back as my department is the most efficient, mistake-free, and timely department in the entire shop. When there's a fire drill, I can actually work at 100% and be the hero when what is an expected 10 hours of work gets done in a few hours. Story 40. One of my first jobs out of college was working on an IT help desk during the third shift on Friday through Sunday from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I did have one day shift, which was very different. I'd get there around 9:55 p.m. on Friday night, clock in, and ask the second shift guy if anything was going on. Typically, it would be a no, as most everyone in our organization was done for the weekend. Our jobs were to make sure any outages got reported or to answer the phone or email for people who were randomly having PC issues on the weekends. On occasion, I'd have to move PC equipment from one cubicle to another if someone was physically moving to a new area. This wasn't technically part of my job, but it helped out the Tier 2 guys so they didn't have to move PCs during business hours. It was a pretty sweet gig if you don't mind working during the night and sleeping during the day. I'd maybe get 1 or 2 phone calls during the weekend, but Monday morning could get busy. By the time things started hitting the fan at 6 a.m., I was just about out of there. I'd watch Netflix or whatever I was able to load up on my iPad, study for IT certs, or walk around the building. I only did it for 9 months, and then my boss offered me a day shift. I figured I'd take it, otherwise I'd never move up, and my wife would end me. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.